What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and today I'm bringing you a guide on how to use Cyclizar, a brand new Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This thing is absolutely crazy and has some really unique things that it can do. So if you're excited, guys, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as we're aiming for 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and comment which Pokemon you guys want to see next. Oh, and we are aiming for 50 likes today, so make sure to hit that like button. All right, let's go ahead and jump on into it. Starting off with Cyclizar's stats, this Pokemon stat distribution is really good. It's got 70 base HP paired with 65 defense and 65 special defense, which honestly is not the best, but where it really makes its marks is in its offensive stats. You've got 95 attack, which is again about average. You got 85 special attack, not the best special attacker out there, but its speed stat is 121. That is absolutely crazy. This Pokemon can effectively speed creep Pokemon that are base 105 while it has an adamant or modest or bold or whatever nature. It's really solid in terms of that speed stat, and because of that, it makes a really good support Pokemon that can outspeed a lot of things, put pressure on an opponent's team with fast taunts and U-turns, and be really good offensively. As for its typing, it is Dragon and Normal, which is not the best. The pure Dragon would have been maybe a little bit better depending on how you look at it. The Dragon typing gives it weaknesses to Ice, Fairy, and Dragon, and the Normal type gives it a weakness to Fighting. However, it also gets resistances to Fire, Water, Grass, and Electric, which is all because of Dragon, but what Normal does provide to it is an immunity to Ghost, which is really awesome in certain situations because we saw last meta in Sword and Shield that Ghost just ran house. They were absolutely amazing, and having now an immunity to them built into a Dragon type is really crazy, especially a Dragon type that has two really solid abilities. And well, actually one of those abilities is absolutely fantastic. The other one is fine, but then its move pool, as well as its potential teammates and the setup options it can do are going to be really good against a lot of different opponents, both in Smogon, in Draft League, and of course also in VGC. I think it has some utility as well. Now, moving on to its abilities, we're looking at Shed Skin and Regenerator. Now, Shed Skin is probably the most lackluster of the abilities. It makes some sense depending on what you're going to be doing with the Cyclizar. If you want to run a Resto set, then that works really well because you can shake off the rest, which is nice, but you can also shake off things like burns and paralysis to slow you down. You can shake off a toxic that might be a little annoying. However, Regenerator is just so much better. Having access to recovering back a third of your health every time you switch out is insanely valuable, especially because there have been so many cut moves for recovery. We saw the nerf to moves like Recover and Roost and Slack Off. These moves here, they've been nerfed. Regenerator has not been nerfed. So having that consistent recovery is really important, especially on a Pokemon that is as slow as this, but it can, fast as this, excuse me, that can switch out and get into a better situation for you while healing itself back out. Most of the time, you're going to see Regenerator being run. I'd see very few instances where Shed Skin would be the move of choice because this thing will not have access to the Violet. However, it is still a very good Pokemon nonetheless with the access to Regenerator as its main move, or main ability rather. Moving on though to its move pool. The move pool this Pokemon has is not the greatest. However, there's some really notable moves here that are going to put a big impact on this Pokemon. Starting off, it is a Rapid Spinner. This thing gets Rapid Spin. I love it. That's really good because hazards are going to be such a huge part of the metagame going forward. We saw so many Pokemon that got access to Spikes and Stealth Rocks and access to T-Spikes nowadays, and having Rapid Spin on a Pokemon this fast is really nice. It also is immune to the Ghost type stab attacks, which is a big advantage because Ghost types would normally come in and take the Rapid Spin effectively to stop them from going through, to spin block them. But now, having the ability to pressure them offensively as well as take the hits defensively because of the immunity is a big advantage. It also gets access to Taunt, a fast taunter with 121 base speed and the ability to U-turn out, because it does get U-turn, and the ability to regen back their health is really valuable because you're able to consistently come in, taunt something to stop them from setting up their hazards or set up a setup move or do whatever against you, and you can be effective at breaking through a team because of it. U-turn I mentioned before, really good, but on top of that, it gets the new move, Shed Tail. We all know what this move does now. However, well, we knew basically what it did. Now we know a lot more about it. Shed Tail costs you 50% of your health, sets up a sub, and then switches out. And the sub goes with you. That's really good because you can get into slower Pokemon that won't have the chance to set up a sub and be able to break through effectively that way. Imagine like a, what is it called? The Great Tusk, the Paradox Dawn fan that was just announced a little while ago. It's a bit slow. Having access to a sub behind it is going to be absolutely deadly. Now, the main thing with this and the big advantage that Cyclizar has over other Pokemon is that it doesn't have to do this just once or twice. It can do this many times over because it has access to Regenerator. Being able to get back that health lets you set up the sub multiple times. I love that about this Pokemon. I think it's going to be a really big niche Pokemon. Not the best out there, but definitely has some big advantage because of Shed Tail and the utility you can do with that move. Next up, it also gets setup moves like Shift Gear. Shift Gear on this Pokemon is kind of crazy. It makes up for its lackluster attack stat by giving it a +2 boost in speed and a +1 boost in attack. It can really be deadly depending on what your opponent might be doing. Getting that boost in attack is so valuable because most of the time you're going to be hitting people with your normal stab, your dragon stab, maybe like a coverage move, maybe a Terra Blast, who knows. At the end of the day, I really like the fact that this thing gets Shift Gear. More Pokemon I wish got it, but this is one of them that I think definitely deserves it because it's like it's a motorcycle, basically. It's a motorcycle dragon. Moving on though, it gets Dragon Claw, of course. It gets access to like Draco Meteor as well. A lot of really good Dragon type covered attacks, but Dragon Claw is going to be the main one that you run because it is the most consistent. And of course, it also gets Knockoff. Having access to Knockoff through the egg moves, or they're not really egg moves anymore, but you guys will know when we start playing through the games. But Knockoff is just a fantastic move to have access to. Not many Pokemon rather get Knockoff anymore because of the way the home transfers work and the way that the cut moves are working now. So having Knockoff innately through the game is really, really valuable and one of the best parts about this Pokemon in general as a support option, but also as a breaker. And of course, it gets Terra Blast as well, which is going to be stronger depending on which stat is stronger. So kind of like Photon Geyser, and it changes the type depending on what you have. And then defensively it also helps out. So you can be like a Steel Terra Blaster and help you take neutral damage from Fairy, which would be really, really good in certain situations, of course. In terms of teammates, what are we looking at? Well, other regenerator Pokemon form a core, a regen core as it would be, and that would be specifically Slowbro and Slowking in my opinion. The reason why these Pokemon are really good, especially Slowking now because of Chilly Reception, is going to be because they resist ice and fighting, which you are weak to. On top of that, you are immune to Ghost, which this Pokemon, or well, those Pokemon are weak to. They also aren't weak to Dragon or Fairy, so they can come in, take multiple hits, recover back out, and then get some health back. They can also go for like Thunder Waves to stop those things from being a little annoying and setting up on you, and they can just be generically good checks to a lot of different Pokemon. On top of that, I think Gengar is a great breaker and a great sweeper to pair with this Pokemon because it's a fast Pokemon that is immune to fighting. It also resists Fairy, which is really good, and they form really good speeds here, 121 and 110. It also has great coverage options to break through opposing dragon types as well that might want to come in and do damage to the Cyclizar. And because Gengar is not the bulkiest thing in the world, you can go for a Shed Tail, get into your Gengar, set up a sub for it, and then you're able to break through a lot more effectively. Or even then you can run like a Sub Nasty plot set, which is really, really deadly. And then other than that, I have Sneasler here. Sneasler is here because it's really fast at like 120 speed. It has really good coverage options as well. And it also breaks extremely well paired with the Cyclizar. Just the typing combination of Poison and Fighting paired with Dragon and Normal is really, really strong because they offensively pressure a lot of different Pokemon. And both these Pokemon kind of force in the Ghost types to break for each other, which is really, really nice. As for some good items, let's talk about the items now. Now, I'm not going to talk about any new items because we don't fully understand exactly what the chances are of them going off are yet, but we are going to talk about some ones that are really good for this Pokemon. Starting off, the most obvious one is Heavy Duty Boots. This Pokemon really appreciates the regenerator. And having access to the boots to be able to protect you so you get your maximum health back from regen is really important. That way you're not taking the 12% from rocks every time you come in. You're not taking the up to 25% from spikes. And at that point in time, if you're taking 25% from spikes and 12% from rocks, you're losing HP every time you switch out. So you gotta make sure you're running Rapid Spin. And having boots on this Pokemon as well also really useful so you can get rid of those hazards more effectively because you do have access to the Rapid Spin like I said before. This will just maximize as much as you possibly can with this Pokemon and will allow it to be around for the longest amount of time. Next up though is going to be the Leftovers. This Pokemon has no reliable recovery outside of regen. So having a little bit of extra percentage back, 6% back every turn, is really valuable and can really add up over the course of a long game, especially if you're going to be taunting Pokemon as they're going for like Toxics or going for Defogs or whatever the case may be. And then you can get a free 6%, which is really useful in certain spots. Then I think Assault Vest is really good because offensive sets are going to be really strong. And while its defenses aren't the best in the world, because its speed stat is so high, most of the time you'll be able to run a lot of defense investment for this Pokemon and be able to break effectively with it, but also take hits because of the Assault Vest that you might have. Assault Vest is really good because its coverage is pretty solid overall and has enough moves to make it worth its while. And then I think Life Orb has some merit as well, not as much as the other ones, but it's really good for something like a Shift Gear set because its speed stat is so high. Boosting its attack by one stage is good, but because its attack is only base 95, it's not the best. Getting the Life Orb boost plus the +1 is really, really strong in a lot of situations. Now I'll start talking about a couple of movesets that we could run or could see run on the Cyclizar. First off, I think a heavy duty boot set with Cyclizar with Regenerator, of course, max attack, max speed is really strong with the adamant nature. Most of the time, I think this Pokemon's gonna be running adamant unless it's being used as like a check to a couple of Pokemon are in the 110s, which I doubt. But again, adamant nature getting that boost in attack, especially on a setup set like this one here with Shift Gear, is really valuable. Having access to Dragon Claw and Knockoff is really strong, and then you have a way to hit the Fairy types with Body Slam, Double Edge, or Facade, depending on what you're going for. Obviously, this kind of struggles a little bit with Steel types, so you need to make sure you have a way around those Pokemon there, but having Shift Gear as a way to really punish them and break them down early on and coming back into setup again because you have Regenerator is really, really big. Another Pokemon set that you can run is going to be something like a leftover set with, again, the Adamant Nature, Regenerator Still, with a Dragon Claw knockoff Terra Blast Poison this time instead of the normal stab, and then Shift Gear. Again, this still hurts you with those steel types, but you can always run Terra Blast Fighting to be able to break through them effectively that way. But getting that boost from Shift Gear, really strong. It's a good offensive set that can do a lot of work depending on what your opponent might bring and depending on what you're expecting in the metagame every single week. Next up is going to be an Assault Vest Cyclizar. AV Cyclizar is really powerful. I mentioned it before, it's one of the better items to have on it, but the reason why is because it gets access to Rapid Spin, Knockoff, U-Turn, and Dragon Tail. Having Dragon Tail's a way to phase things out is really nice. You can get some health back against like special Pokemon because you're not going to be taking too much damage, Dragon Tailing them out, and then getting back into another situation after. I'm putting max HP on this set with Jolly Nature, so you can always outspeed things and get your U-turns off, your knockoffs off before they try and set up on you or try and hit you with a life orb boosted attack or whatever it may be. And then Rapid Spin, of course, is very valuable. This is a very good support Cyclizar on this set here. Next up is going to be another leftover set with a Rapid Spin knockoff U-turn. This time, instead of Dragon Tail, we're running Taunt on it. Taunt, again, really good to be able to stop Pokemon like Clefable from setting up on you. Obviously, they might go for just straight up Moonblast and get the Oko on you, but there's other options around where you can actually set up, let's say you want to taunt this Skarmory or a Corviknight or something like that. That's also really strong to stop it from recovering up, which is really good. And then finally, I have another leftover set here. This one here is relying mostly on the Shed Tail interaction. Rapid Spin and knockoff for support, Shed Tail to get set up into something else, and then Taunt, of course, to be able to stop things from being able to phase out your Taunt or your phase out your set of Pokemon with the let's say a Whirlwind or whatever it might be. Now, in terms of predictions, what are we looking at in terms of predictions? I think some really good predictions for this Pokemon are going to be, it's going to be a solid RU Pokemon with some potential use in UU. I don't see very much use in this in OU. And the reason being is because its stat distribution, while the 121 speed is great, it lacks a lot in terms of offensive pressure if it's not running a Life Orb or it's not running Shift Gear. That's one of the reasons why. In terms of RU, I think it's going to be at the top end of that because I think Shed Tail is going to be broken. It might even be banned from RU, I think, depending on how the meta shapes up. In UU, it's going to be a great stall breaker and a great way to get set up into a Pokemon that can just break really effectively. In VGC, I don't think it's going to have much impact. And the reason why is because outside of just a fast taunt user, it really doesn't do much because it's missing out on like a lot of double utility moves. It doesn't get fake out or any redirection moves, and it doesn't break easily without setup. That's really the main reason why. So it's going to have a hard time in a metagame, which can be dominated once again by like Incineroar and Lando T. And so I feel like pretty confident that the Cyclizar in VGC is not going to be anywhere near as good as it would be in singles. Now, as for Draft League, this is my specialty. On a 17 to 18 point scale, which is typically what we've been looking at in the past generation, it will be around 7 to 10 points, I think, depending on your league, of course. It has a lot of useful sets that can do a lot of good things, especially when you are being able to kind of counter team your opponent a little bit. It can pivot really well, and we know from last generation that pivoting is an absolute amazing strategy. One of the best strategies there is to pivot around a bunch of times, get into an advantage situation, and then break from there. And Cyclizar will do that better than a lot of other Pokemon will, which is really important. With the nerf to recovery moves, the regen is really important more than ever, and it actually will force opponents into worrying. Is it going to be going for a U-turn and pivoting out or a Shed Tail, or is it going to be clicking Shift Gear and then I might just lose the game from there? It's really hard, so people have to respect Cyclizar both offensively and defensively, and they also have to give respect to it in terms of what types they're going to be drafting, in terms of make sure they have good fairies, good ghosts, and good steel types to be able to effectively handle Cyclizar. A team with good threats to those Pokemon, those fairies, ghosts and steels, are really going to be able to take advantage of Cyclizar and make the most out of it. I think Pokemon that pair really well with it, on top of that, are going to be Pokemon like Excadrill and Iron Treads, which is going to be the new Donphan form. Both of those are ground and steel, which is really powerful and can break really well with amazing offensive typing. I mentioned Gengar before because of the resist to fairy and the immunity to fighting, and then Sneasler as well as a really good breaker. Well, that is all I have for how to use Cyclizar. And if you guys enjoyed the video, then make sure to leave a like on the video. We're aiming for 50 likes on today's content, and subscribe to the channel, by the way, for more daily content as well, daily Pokemon content. We're getting close to 2,000 subscribers, and I really appreciate you guys help us out and get there. Also, make sure to comment which Pokemon you want to see next on this how to use guide. I'm going to be covering every single new Pokemon, and I'm really excited to bring them out to you. Shout out to our YouTube channel members. We have our level 1s, which are going to be Liv, Eric, Zeke, and Texas Man. Our level 2 is Tone, and our level 3 is Sully. Thank you all for the support, and thank you all for watching as well. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.